many times do you people need to learn the lesson that it actually does not matter what politicians say? Is that news to you? Is that a hot take? Is that a black pill? Is that a conspiracy theory? You actually cannot listen and take at face value what politicians say, even when they're on your side, even when they're Republicans, even when they're saying things that you really agree with. As it turns out, politicians get away with saying things all the time. And saying things is the instrument of the politician. That is how they earn the loyalty and allegiance of the voters, to empower them. And that is the art of the politician. It's been the art of the politician for as long as we have had mass media, for as long as we've had the internet, television, radio, the printing press. We cannot simply listen to what politicians say. We have to know who they are. It's not enough to listen to their professed values that they express in words. We have to look at their interests and the interests of the people that are supporting them, their benefactors. That is the level of analysis we have to engage in if we're going to really understand politics. So when Vance says something, equally, just like when Biden says something, it's not enough to listen to their words or the values that they profess to hold with their words. We have to look at who they are, and more importantly, we have to look at their benefactors. We have to look at their actions. I would say more importantly, we have to look at who their actions benefit and who's paying them, and what the interests of the people paying them really are. And so in the case of something like Vance, I don't even care about the speech. If you like the speech, newsflash, you were the intended audience, okay? If you liked it, it's because that was the intended purpose of the speech. It was designed that way. That was their intention. In the same way that you're licking your chops when a McDonald's advertisement comes on and they show a picture of a quarter pounder with cheese and it makes you hungry, that's the same intended effect of a speech that's all about mass migration and free speech and the rest of it. If you like that, you were the intended audience. You were the mark. They said those things to elicit that reaction. That was actually the goal. People can do that, you know. People can do that. They can write things knowing that you like them, and that then you will support the person saying the words. And all you need to know about Vance to understand anything about him is that he is a fiction created by Peter Thiel. That's all you need to know. You cannot talk about Vance without talking about Peter Thiel in the same sentence. Want to know why? Because Peter Thiel created him. I'll give you a brief history of J.D. Vance. Vance graduated Yale Law School in his late 20s. When he was at school at Yale, he had a correspondence with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel visited the campus and gave a speech. Vance introduced himself, and from then on, they became lifelong friends. They forged a friendship. After Vance graduated law school, he went to work for a biotech firm in Silicon Valley. Now, how did Vance, who graduated with a degree in law from Yale on the East Coast, get a job on the West Coast in Silicon Valley in biotech? How did he have that connection? I don't know about you, but I don't know a lot of people that graduate from a law school and then go to work in a biotech firm. I don't know a lot of people that work in law school and then somehow forge connections on the West Coast when they're from Ohio and study on the East Coast. Well, we know exactly how he got the job, because the CEO of the biotech firm said, "I hired Vance as a personal favor to Peter Thiel." That's how he got his start. So Vance meets Thiel in law school. They forge a friendship. Vance graduates. Thiel puts in a call, because Thiel is a billionaire in the tech industry and a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley on the West Coast, and says, hey, I need you to give this guy a job. He's one of mine. The guy says, no problem, hires Vance. Then Vance goes to work at Peter Thiel's venture capital firm. So then Peter Thiel hires him outright. What does Vance know about venture capital? He studied law. What does he now know about venture capitalism? What does he now know about investing? What does he now know about the world of finance and technology? It turns out not much, because his colleagues who worked with him at that firm say they never saw him in the office. While he was working for Peter Thiel at that firm for a span of 7-9 months, Vance published his book, Hillbilly Elegy, and went on a national book tour. He went to a retreat for Silicon Valley elites. He went to the Aspen Institute. He went on TV. He went on all the big talk shows to promote his book, at the same time that he was at a no-show job at Thiel's venture capital firm. Then Vance went to work for another venture capital firm. The boss that runs that firm said he didn't do much. And when Vance was working at that firm, you know what he invested in? He invested in all of Peter Thiel's tech companies. Then he leaves that firm and starts his own firm, and he gets $150 million to run it from Peter Thiel and Peter Thiel's allies. That was Vance's career in the private sector. That was his illustrious American dream, American success story in the private sector. A series of no-show jobs. It's pure patronage. Pure patronage. To build up Vance's portfolio with these big investments in tech firms, enriched himself, made himself a small fortune, and aligned himself with all of the tech oligarchs that are now running this administration, coincidentally. After Vance leaves his firm, he decides he wants to run for office. There's just one problem. He's going to run for Senate in his home state of Ohio, but it's a crowded primary. There's two other very competitive Republicans running for the Republican nomination for the seat. They need Trump's endorsement to win the primary and then go on and win the seat. Problem is, Vance was a never-Trumper for 6 years. Vance was adamantly opposed to Trump, didn't vote for him in 2016, was criticizing him right up until 2020. And in 2021, got the idea that he'd run for the seat and he needs Trump's endorsement. So how do you get that one past the goalie? How do you get Trump to endorse somebody that has been adamantly against him for the past 6 years? During the presidential election, during Charlottesville, afterward, during the pandemic. How do you get Trump to endorse somebody who is a never-Trumper for many years? Peter Thiel calls Trump and says, hey, let's have a meeting at the Trump Doral. Let's have a meeting, or I think it was at Mar-a-Lago. And Thiel brings Vance to the meeting. This is in July 2021. And Thiel smooths things over between the president and Vance, because Peter Thiel's a longtime donor of Trump. Peter Thiel was one of his biggest donors in 2016 and was the biggest individual donor in the midterms in 2022. So Thiel smooths things over. In 2022, Peter Thiel makes a call, and his friends go to Mar-a-Lago because they owed Thiel a favor, and they convince Trump to endorse Vance. Vance gets the endorsement, wins the primary by a hair, and then with $15 million in Vance's super PAC, Vance wins the election to become the senator from Ohio. Then, last year in 2024, it is Vance with his cronies in Silicon Valley that he met through Thiel. David Sachs, one of Thiel's good friends, among others, convene a Silicon Valley fundraiser for Trump at David Sachs' house. And Thiel and Thiel's allies like Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk make a call to Trump and encourage him to pick Vance for the vice presidency. Now Vance is the vice president of the United States. Vance it is factual to say, not an exaggeration, not a literary device, His entire career in the private sector, in the public sector, is a result of patronage from Peter Thiel. He is a creation. He is a fabrication, an artifice that was built brick by brick with Peter Thiel's money and the connections that Peter Thiel's money buys. That's who he is. And that is what you need to know about him. Not that he says a based thing about immigration in a fucking speech. It's that he owes everything to this guy. And who is Peter Thiel? How did Peter Thiel make his fortune? Well, first of all, Peter Thiel's an immigrant. That's something you need to know about him. Another thing you need to know about him is that he's gay. He's gay. He's living a gay lifestyle, boyfriends, a husband, the whole thing. He's a gay immigrant. Peter Thiel made his fortune. He's now worth $20 billion. The vast majority of that comes from a company that he founded in 2001 called Palantir. He co-founded that company with Alex Karp. Palantir is a contractor for the CIA. It is effectively a privatization of a CIA surveillance program. After 9/11 and around that time, the CIA was trying to spy on everybody, collect all of Americans' data and run it through artificial intelligence, run it through a computer algorithm. But they ran into the Constitution and they couldn't do it. So the CIA created a cutout or a front. They privatized that spying program and called it Palantir. And that is what Peter Thiel founded with Alex Karp in 2001. Palantir received seed funding from In-Q-Tel, which is the CIA's venture capital arm. So the CIA funded the creation of the company that Peter Thiel founded. And from 2001 until 2008, the CIA was Palantir's only customer. Now, of course, Palantir has branched out and it does business with the NSA, the FBI, Homeland Security, with the Israeli Mossad, with other intelligence agencies around the world. Alex Karp, the co-founder, is a Jewish Zionist. We've talked about him on the show before. Alex Karp, who co-owns and is actually the CEO of Palantir, he said that Palantir is responsible for destroying the far right in Europe. Because when Palantir prevents Muslim terror attacks, it suppresses nativism and far-right political sentiment in countries like Germany and France and elsewhere in Europe. Alex Karp says his biggest fear is that Christian nationalists will take over the government and kill him for being Jewish. After the October 7th attack in Israel, Palantir flew its whole board to Israel to meet with Netanyahu and the president of Israel in the war cabinet. After October 7th, they reserved hundreds of positions at their company for Jewish employees because they said that there's so much discrimination against Jewish people, they're going to do like reverse affirmative action. And so they set aside 180 positions at the company where they would only hire Jewish applicants. Palantir's Lavender program is a facial recognition program that has identified close to 100,000 Palestinian militants to put on a kill list for the Israeli government. And they assess how likely it is or what the chances are. They make a recommendation of what the IDF should do with these people, whether they should kill them or let them live. Lavender has identified tens of thousands of Palestinian militants with facial recognition and says this is who they are, and there's like 100% chance you should kill this guy. There's like a 30% chance you should kill this guy. And Israel can literally set aside, we want to kill these 20,000 people that Palantir flagged. Now we want to kill 20,000 that are considered less of a risk. This is what they sell to the Israeli government. In a Reddit Ask Me Anything, somebody said, is Palantir a front for the CIA? Peter Thiel responded, the CIA is a front for Palantir. And I know people that work at Palantir, they said it's basically a front for the Mossad. You can't talk about Vance without talking about Thiel in the same sentence for reasons I just laid out. And who is Peter Thiel? He is inextricably connected to the intelligence community. and to the state of Israel through his co-founder and CEO of Palantir, Alex Karp, and through his company's connections to the CIA, which is Israeli infiltrated, and Palantir's connection to Israel and the Mossad. Asked what Palantir should do with lavender and facial recognition, Peter Thiel said, "I defer to Israel." Now, let's consider something else. He retweets this guy. I'll give those guys a follow. They all retweet each other. They're all in a group chat. They all retweet each other's articles and support each other's stuff. This is a pretty cool group of guys. They create the world of the dream. They bring you into the dream. Now they got you. That's the definition of the Matrix. And you wonder, who are these quirky, eccentric, anonymous accounts passing the ball to each other in network? How do they make money? What jobs do they have? Do they have a job like I do, or I'm like a fucking chemical engineer at some company? Do they have a job like I'm some insurance salesman? And do you remember what Elon Musk said to the leader of AFD when he promoted her into space? The reason AFD is surging in large part is because Elon is promoting the AFD on Twitter. You know what Elon asked the leader of AFD? Do you support Israel? She said, oh, well, I don't know what you mean by that. Do you think Israel should have a right to exist? Well, yes, of course I do. Yes, sir. Yes, I believe Israel has a right to exist. And Elon went to Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro. And Trump went to the grave of Rabbi Schneerson at 770, the Chabad Lubavitch headquarters, with Ben Shapiro also. And everyone's literally telling you, pay no attention to that. Oh, that's just politics. Just shut up. That's just politics. Politics is when you go to Auschwitz and you go to Rabbi Schneerson's grave. Politics is when you demand that someone say Israel has a right to exist. Politics is when you ban anti-Semites. Politics is when you bring TikTok back, but TikTok automatically censors Free Palestine. Politics is when you argue for free speech, but you instruct the Department of Justice to deport anybody that criticizes Israel. That's politics. That's just doing politics. We could just do things. So they say. And that is where J.D. Vance landed before 810 in the conference. Let's also remember the replacement migration is happening in J.D. Vance's own loins. J.D. Vance gives a based speech about replacement migration. What's going on in your own fucking house? Huh? He's there with, I'm sorry, does the irony escape anybody that he's there with his Indian wife who's a fucking immigrant? So I'm sorry, you're standing there complaining about immigration and the identity of these countries. That's not even what he's saying. But that's what people are projecting onto him. Key distinction. They say, Vance is based. He's talking about migration. He means replacement migration. He married an Indian immigrant. His kids are not white. They're named Vivek. Hello? They're named Vivek. He went on Twitter. Someone said Vance is a white supremacist. He said, I'll have you know my kids aren't even white. How dare you? That's your guy? Oh, no, but he changed his mind. A guy marries a non-white immigrant. Someone says, you're racist. How fucking dare you? My kids aren't even white. And then when he needed Trump's endorsement for Senate, he saw which way the wind was blowing. That's when he changed his mind and realized, oh, I made a mistake. My kids aren't white and I'm no longer proud of it. Would you really believe that? What's more likely, he's saying it to trick you, or he really had a change of heart in time for the Senate election in 2022? So which is more likely? Vance had a genuine change of heart and is now a white fucking nationalist? Vance changed his mind and is now a white nationalist who's against replacement migration? He's ashamed of what he's done. He's ashamed of his family. Just in time for the election? Or he cynically changed his rhetoric because he saw that the future of politics was national conservatism, dog whistling to the white right. The deception that is being foisted on us by Vance is just shocking and unbelievable. It's truly shocking. And I'll tell you one other thing. Vance was being groomed to be president since 2011. When he was a veteran and a blogger, before he went to law school, he was being mentored by David Frum. David Frum is a Jewish neocon who wrote speeches for George W. Bush. When George W. Bush was lying us into the Iraq War, Frum was writing the speeches, and he mentored Vance. And he was Vance's mentor for 6 years, maybe longer. In 2011, Vance was writing articles on Frum's website, and Vance went to Frum's house for dinner parties, and they had an ongoing correspondence. And Frum really believed that Vance would somehow become the president, even though he was nothing at that point. He was a Marine. He was some Marine veteran, hadn't even been to law school. Somehow, Frum thought he'd be the president. So Vance goes on, graduates law school, writes his book, and Vance is angling to run for office. But Vance is a never-Trumper, just like Frum. Frum is an outspoken never-Trumper, so is Vance. Vance says Trump is Hitler. I never vote for him. He's an idiot. He's a racist. I'm going to miss Obama. Obama was so smart. Those white people hated him because they were jealous of how smart Obama was. This is what Vance is writing, right up until 2017. After Trump wins the election, Vance's aspirations are sort of thwarted because it's clear that the trajectory of the GOP is not in Frum's direction, which is moderation, being more liberal, being more pro-environment, etc. Clearly, the trajectory of the GOP changed when Trump won towards populism, towards nationalism, economic nationalism, and all the rest. So this is a real emergency because Vance has taken a stand against Trump. And all of this support that Vance has garnered from his book, Hillbilly Elegy, seems like it was all for nothing because now he's been cucked out of the future of the right wing. How could he now hold office or be a national figure in a Trump Republican Party? He was counting on Trump to lose so that he could come in and save the day. Well, Vance convenes a meeting in January 2017 after the inauguration in Washington, D.C. Vance gets a hotel in Arlington, Virginia, and invites David Frum and all the other never-Trump Republicans. And David Frum says about that meeting, you could read it, he published an article in The Atlantic, he said, the unspoken purpose of the meeting was how to plot out a Vance for President campaign in the late 2020s or early 2030s. Okay? How does Vance, who has positioned himself as the voice of the next generation, the young, energetic, millennial Republican who's more socially liberal, more environmentally conscious, anti-Trump, how does a guy like that reposition himself when he was counting on Trump to lose so that he could inherit the mantle of the millennial GOP when Trump surprisingly wins? How could we pivot? Well, he holds a meeting after Trump's inaugurated to that end to figure that out and answer that question. And after that meeting, he comes back home to Ohio where he could have residency in Ohio. He makes amends with Trump through Peter Thiel, and he rebrands himself as a fucking populist. Rebrands himself as a national populist who's and says all the right things. He's being fed information from young right-wing guys on Twitter, from the Thiel Network, etc. He's self-consciously and deliberately speaking our language, reflecting it back to us, so that we will say, yo, he sounds just like us. Yeah, that's by design. That was their intention. Yo, he sounds just like us. He's like a Twitter anon. Yeah, he was a fat gay chud. He was a fat pro-trans, pro-Iraq war, pro-affirmative action, liberal, moderate, Gen Z GOP fucking never Trump chud until he realized that was going nowhere. And when Trump won, self-consciously decided, looks like Trump's going to be the nominee again. Looks like I need Trump's endorsement. I have to make a pivot. I'm at NatCon. I'm at Sov House. I'm at this or that. I'm now like a reasonable, articulate nationalist that could speak the language of the Christian trads, the white right, the economic nationalists, the populists. It's all a fiction. It's all by design. And when you want to understand what he's really about, just look at who's behind him. But when Vance was at his firm, one of his venture capital firms, he was directing money into Anduril, which is Palmer Luckey's Peter Thiel-funded drone company. Now that Vance is vice president, look at the stock price of Palantir. Who's getting the big contracts? SpaceX, Anduril. You want to know what they're really up to? It's about these contracts. It's about making these guys rich. All in on crypto, all in on AI, all in on drones and satellites, which SpaceX will send into space. Satellites and drones that these companies will build, AI, which is going to unite all of these different weapon systems and process the information. They're all going to get super rich. They're going to be running the military. They're going to be running the security state. They're going to be running the country. And that's the goal. And, you know, being a Trojan horse with this immigration rhetoric, that's just the way to get there. That's just the vessel to get there. Everyone telling you otherwise is in on it. Anyone and everyone telling you otherwise is just plain in on it. The guy is a fiction. So I'm not buying it. He said some good things about immigration. Okay, great. Good for him. Call for an immigration moratorium then. Ban all the immigrants. And by the way, people say, well, Vivek is cringe. Think about this. Vivek Ramaswamy said in December, Americans are lazy. They're getting cut out because they don't work hard. It's not because of government policies like H-1Bs. So let's be very clear about something. America is not dying. America's being killed deliberately by policy, okay? Americans are losing their jobs because of financialization and because of free trade. Because unions and other government policies destroyed the auto industry, because government inaction let the auto industry die, because free trade and other government decisions allowed all the factories to go overseas. And when those industries died, and those companies died, and those workshops and jobs died, the communities that they supported started to die as well. And so small towns that relied on those industries as the economic engine and life of the society started to die. Because there's no jobs, people started to move away. Because people started to move away, those towns entered a permanent recession. Because they entered a permanent recession, it accelerated the economic decline. And the people that lived there could no longer get jobs. The men didn't make as much money as the women. The women worked in the schools and the hospitals, which could support a high wage. And the guys couldn't get jobs. So they were given to death of despair, drug overdoses, alcoholism, etc., suicide. And they're in a death spiral. And this is what's killing America. And this is the forgotten man and woman. The people that don't live in New York and LA, which have the cottage industries of finance and entertainment, that don't live in the big cities that are a magnet for these small towns, the forgotten men and women are the people in the small towns that dot the whole country that used to be supported by industry, which has now gone somewhere else. And now that the economy in America is all services, the center of gravity is the big cities, and it's destroying all the smaller towns. Those are the forgotten men and women that the Trump movement animated. Policy killed them. Now, Vance's big claim to fame is that he wrote a book called Hillbilly Elegy. And what Hillbilly Elegy represented in 2016 was the Trump whisperer. Here is Vance, who is from rural Ohio, from one of those poor cities affected by blight and drug abuse and all those kinds of things, and he's explaining why the hillbillies are angry. He's explaining he's the translator for the Trump supporters to the elites. He's explaining the sentiment of the hillbilly white people from the small towns to the people in San Francisco, LA, New York, etc. He's the Trump translator. But what does Vance say in Hillbilly Elegy? Vance says that the reason the hillbillies are angry is because they're losers, effectively. He says they're well-meaning people, but the reason they're poor and miserable is because they're not pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. It's because they have a toxic culture based on failure and doesn't reward success, and they don't work hard. He says that he was so disgusted by his own culture, which is white Appalachian Americans, that he married so far outside of his race, an Indian immigrant. He says that in the book. He says, I was so repulsed by the defeatist culture that I was raised in, white Appalachians. That's why I married as far away as possible an Indian immigrant in California. That's what he says. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy recently wrote a long post echoing that same sentiment. Vivek wrote the infamous post where he says Americans are losing to India because they're lazy. They're having sleepovers while Indians are working extra hard. They're playing soccer and goofing off while Indians they're in a battery of SAT study courses and programming classes and so on. And understand, this is the same contradiction that's at the heart of the Trump movement, which is the country's being killed by policy. Vivek and Vance disagree. They say, no, Americans are losers. It's not H-1Bs taking the good jobs. No, it's Americans are lazy. Now, all of these Trump people are saying, well, what Vivek said is terrible. He's evil. He's got to go. Well, Vivek was Vance's college roommate. Vivek and Vance went to law school together. You know how many people are in Yale's graduating class for law school? Like 200, 150, 200. My high school class was bigger. There were 1,000 people in my high school class. There were probably 200 people in my middle school class. Vance was in a law school class of 200 with Vivek, and they were roommates. And Vance's son is named Vivek. Vance named his son after Vivek Ramaswamy. His son's name is Vivek. So Vance loves him some Indians. He married one. He's got Indian kids. He names his Indian kid Vivek after his Indian roommate. Vance and Vivek both talk about how Americans who voted for Trump are just losers taking out their anger on the system when they should only blame themselves. And Vance is supposed to be the successor to Trump. He's supposed to understand the Trump movement and Trump voters. He's supposed to be based. He doesn't get it. He still believes those things. Those are his deeply held beliefs. And the reason that he's being propped up is because he is of the Silicon Valley elite, but he has credibility with the voters because these dummies will eat it up. All Vance has to do is go to some podunk bar with this fucking mammy in a sweatshirt, and people go, that guy's really down to earth and relatable. That's it. That's what he is. He's not America first. He's everything that we are against. He's fat. He's a chud. He's a race mixer. He is a anti-Trump liberal. But he is a Trojan horse for all these Silicon Valley people that are taking over. And Trump isn't in on it. I don't even think Trump is in on it. I think Trump recognized that Vance came with the Musk money, that if he chose Vance, that Musk and the others would come through, and he needed the money. But when they asked Trump, who's your successor? Is it Vance? Trump said, no, it's too early. Trump isn't even in on it. Some people voted for Trump. These other people voted for Trump because it carried Vance with him. And their real goal, this 4 years, is a runway for Vance. They really see the Trump 2024 second term as a big, long runway for Vance 2028. And every opportunity that they can get to put Vance in front of a camera, give a speech, look presidential, with a fucking dog or whatever, they're going to use it to say, wow, Vance is even better than Trump. I'm really excited about him. It's ridiculous. I can't believe people don't see through it. Well, you know what it is? It's the Matrix. People are being paid not to see it. People are being paid to look the other way, or they're in on it. And the information ecosystem is so saturated with people that are in on it that normies don't even know what's going on. They don't even know the facts.